What's going on, everyone? And another day, another Grizzlies basketball game coming up. The Grizzlies are headed to Orlando to take on D Magic, and you're gonna see some faces that you haven't seen play much in this game. So we're gonna talk about that, and we're also gonna talk about some pairings that you also haven't seen much coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
I like that.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Damichael, beat writer here for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee, joined by my esteemed co-host here, the former site manager over at Grizzly Bear Blues, one of the best in Memphis himself, Joe Mullinax. How you doing, Joe?
That is lofty praise coming from you. I'm honored. And I saw you do our new little tagline, Let's Lock In. I picked up on that.
Joe,
you and me. The vibes are immaculate, just like the team that we follow and cover. It's remarkable, Damichael. We're becoming the two best friends that anyone could have.
we talk about chemistry a lot with this team, Joe. You see our chemistry, it reminds me of I was watching the last game when the Grizzlies played. I went back and watched the game. There was one play I tweeted about in particular, because in that play, I was sitting right there, and Morant, as Steven Adams was coming to set a screen, he just waved them off. He's like, "No, go back over there, go back over there." So Steven Adams goes back to the top of the key, and throws him the ball. And as soon as throws the ball, he just jets to the rim, and Steven Adams does this little fancy backdoor pass to him, easy dunk. And it's like, how did Steven Adams even know that was coming? How did you know I was about to say let's lock in, Joe? But guess what? It's the chemistry.
It's the chemistry. And I'm totally Morant in our relationship, right? You're Steven Adams and I'm Morant.
I'll take it. I can do the dirty work.
Or maybe I'm off on that. I'm bigger than you. I'm probably Steven Adams in that relationship. But that's
and okay. I can be the guy that shines too. You
definitely can shine. I'll give you credit for that.
I can play either role. Taylor Jenkins likes versatility, and I pride myself on versatility as well, Joe. So we appreciate you guys as well for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies here another day, and make sure you're listening, you're watching wherever we are, because we're everywhere, just like the air that you breathe right here, right now. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, YouTube. It's Locked On Grizzlies as there. So we appreciate you. We appreciate your reviews, your comments. We're always looking. We're always listening to them and, using them to help better the show. But, Joe, a big day here for the Grizzlies. Another preseason matchup, another day to get better. Taylor Jenkins called this a big evaluation period. And we might see some players who haven't played as much lately in this game, Joe.
Especially the guys that just signed the Exhibit 10 deals, right? Like that's something that in terms of news, Sean McDermott, Matthew Hurt, I believe, two guys that very much are there to be cut. Right? Like, I think people need to understand how those work. And Brandon Abraham at BC Abraham on Twitter, nobody, no offense to Michael, and you're only one person. I was very fortunate to have a team at Grizzly Bear Blues. Nobody covers the Memphis hustle like Brandon Abraham does. So at BC Abraham needs to be your follow for everything Memphis hustle. He refreshed everybody's memory on that, right? Because they were concerned. Forgive me, I forget Jake. Maybe it was Jake, the young man who won the dance contest.
Justin Bean.
Mm-hmm. Justin Bean. Please don't take me not knowing your name as knowing that you were going to get cut. But that's kind of how it worked out. Sorry, Justin Bean. And Justin Bean's getting paid very well for a G League player, which is the point that I'm trying to make. They signed these Exhibit 10 contracts. They're going to play for the hustle, but they get a larger pay or a larger contract than they would have had otherwise through these Exhibit 10 deals. So maybe McDermott plays, maybe Hurt plays, maybe they don't. And again, they're literally just there to be on the team for a couple of days, and then they get cut and they bring in another two guys. But besides those two, the cult of Kenneth Lofton Jr., I saw somebody call it that today. I wish I could remember off the top of my head who said that. because that's brilliant. That's very much what he's building.
Did you hear the nickname that he's been getting from the fan base? I love it. I might have to write it in one of my stories now. They're calling him. I saw it in the Locked On Grizzlies comments once, but I've also seen people, actually say it. Gen Zebo.
Oh, that is really good.
Gen Zebo. I love
Gen Zebo. I do love that.
I just talked to him the other day, and I forgot. Now I meant to mention that to him because that's I'll turn that into an entire story, Joe.
That's not a bad nickname at all, and you are very good at that. Credit to you. You could take that and run with it and do it very well. Watching him play obviously is going to be something that a lot of folks are excited about. Yep. The evaluation period. I liken this game, Damichael, to like the last preseason game in the NFL, right? Where you don't want your starters to get hurt. You play a bunch of dudes and you see who sticks. These games are interesting, especially if you're listening to Locked On Grizzlies, chances are you're a pretty big fan of the team, or you're at least interested in how the team is establishing itself. This is your end of roster guys. This is, are they really part of the team long-term? You can't really make that determination in one game, especially a preseason game against the Orlando Magic, but you certainly can look and see how they fit in terms of scheme, how well they move. Game speed is very different from practice speed, as you know, Damichael, both as an athlete yourself and actually watching the professionals do it. There's nothing like game reps. So it gives you a chance to see them participate and play in that environment, even as controlled as a preseason game may be, or meaningless, depending on your perspective. It's still a chance for guys that are not going to get as much chance to get reps as the regular season gets started next week, to get those chances. Let John, those guys have the night off, because I know Taylor Jenkins has talked about the Thursday game being more the dress rehearsal for the squad. This is one where you get to see if the cult of Kenneth Lofton Jr. is one that is truly worth paying attention to, for example, at least maybe earlier than most folks would assume.
Yeah, and we haven't, Taylor Jenkins hasn't come out, directly
and
said, hey, these guys aren't XYZ, John's not going to play, Des not going to play, etc. But what he did say is, he wants to give the younger guys a little bit more of an opportunity, and the fact that Thursday is being considered more of the quote-unquote dress rehearsal game for the regular season. It's
possible that they play like 15 to 20 minutes, right? Yeah. Like maybe he wants them to start getting their wheels going in terms of playing on a Tuesday and then a Thursday. That's not weird in the NBA at all. That's the most common schedule, normal. Right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? So maybe they play a little bit on Tuesday and then don't play the whole game. And then Thursday is the one where you see Ja get 34 minutes or whatever it might be. But I'm curious to see how Taylor Jenkins does that rotation. Does he, wet the whistle of Morant and those guys and give them a little bit of run? Or does he just sit them completely and let, Kennedy Chandler run the point and that sort of stuff and let the end of the bench guys go? That'll be definitely something to watch for going into the dress rehearsal on Thursday.
Yeah, it's you have a lot of options, right? Because a lot of guys who have potential to impact the 10-man rotation have a chance to pretty, kind of make their case, in this game. Because I asked Taylor Jenkins at the practice. They had a practice in Memphis here before they left for Orlando on yesterday. And I said, look, basically you want to have a 10-man rotation, which is kind of where the Grizzlies are trending towards. And I said, look, have you thought about having an 11-man, 12-man rotation possibly early in the season? Because quite frankly, if you do the math, we know who the 5 starters are likely to be. You have Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Santi Aldama, Steven Adams. That's 5 guys. Brandon Clark, Tyus Jones, and Zaire Williams are going to play. That's 8. It's very likely that John Conchar is another guy in that bench grouping. That's 9. So you have that power forward position right there where David Roddy has gotten the first minutes off the bench in that role. Jake LaRavia has gotten the first minutes, bench minutes in that role. Xavier Tillman has gotten the first bench minutes in that same role as well. 3 guys. So that's 12 players right there who directly impact this rotation. and 2 of them aren't going to be in it. So those 3 guys that I just mentioned are going to get time to play in this game. And Joe, that's important because, again, it's another chance. It's another opportunity for Taylor Jenkins to figure this thing out. It's a good problem to have, but I keep saying it, Joe, I wouldn't want to be the person having to make that decision.
It's not easy, right? It's not easy. You know, it's a good problem to have in terms of all that depth and figuring out who is most ready to contribute to winning basketball, or perhaps who is best built at this moment to contribute to winning basketball. I'll tell you what is built extremely well, Damichael. It's Built Bar. All right. I don't know if you guys have tried these Built Bar Puffs yet. If you haven't, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There is a new flavor. It is delicious, indulgent cookie dough. It is covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. It's all of the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you and covered in 100% real chocolate. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. You need to run to Built.com to snag a box for you and your family. It will be the perfect treat. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them all for yourself. That's what I would probably be most likely to do. And what's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently. It provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is also good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Bit Bar. And here's the offer. You go to Built.com. You use the promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off of your order. Use promo LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Damichael, obviously the team is in a position where they are competing. They are looking to find the right fits. And that led me to kind of wonder, to ponder on, as you and I talk back and forth, what our topics are going to be with all this immaculate energy and vibes that we're building here at Locked On Grizzlies. You know, our pairing is pretty strong, right? You know, it takes 2 to tango here, and you're a more than capable dance partner. Watching this team and seeing how they find chemistry and who fits best amongst themselves in terms of the rotation, I looked at some names, and we can, you know, go back and forth on this, that perhaps would be really good fits, theoretically speaking, as we get actual reps and game time playing together to base it off of, and some names that I'm a little more concerned about. So maybe, you know, I can be bad cop, you can be good cop, or vice versa, right? Maybe we'll surprise one another as we go through this exercise. So the first pairing that I saw last year that I think we'll see more of this year that makes me a little nervous in terms of chemistry and fit is Ja Morant and Tyus Jones. Now, separately, I would argue they're the best point guard tandem in the NBA in terms of your starter is, you know, some people want to say Trae Young is better than Ja Morant. You're ridiculous. Relax. Going back to our episode from yesterday about my fan-sided piece. But, you know, Ja Morant's a top 5 at worst point guard in the NBA. I think that's fair to say. At worst, he's probably better than that. I would have him second behind Steph Curry, but that's just me. Unless you count Luka Doncic as a point guard. Whatever, right? He's top 3 at worst. And then Tyus Jones is probably the best backup point guard in the entire NBA. Could probably start for 8 to 10 teams in the league. Maybe he's on a bad team as the starter, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't be a starter. And obviously he has started lots of games for a very good team in the Memphis Grizzlies. Their games make me nervous in terms of meshing together defensively. Ja is improving as a defender. I do think that growth will continue this season, but I think you're asking a lot of him to take on the better of an opponent's 2 backcourt options for an extended period of time. I think that Tyus has shown growth as a 3-point shooter. I'm not confident enough in him to be that spot-up guy that Ja Morant needs alongside him, a la Desmond Bane. So I think that with Tyus's deserved raise and with the increased focus on Ja playing off the ball, I could see more Tyus-Ja pairings. The numbers don't necessarily back this up, Damichael. The numbers kind of like these 2 guys together, not fully, but there's some things that they do well, especially on the offensive end. I am nervous about upping the ante in terms of playing time and usage rate for these two guys on the floor together. Maybe you can talk me out of that concern.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm going to try to do, Joe.
That's simpatico, man.
It's because, I like the pairing. And the thing about it is this isn't a every game pairing. This Tyus Jones and Ja Morant is a very situational thing. If you look at last season, most of the times when we saw that pairing is when they were playing teams that heavily pressured the ball. They were playing teams, that had Patrick Beverley, like the Timberwolves. And you say, hey, we need to bring in Tyus Jones. Why? Because for the people who have played basketball out there, it doesn't look like it on TV or when you're watching a game, but when you're dribbling the ball up the court and no one's in front of you, you don't waste much energy. When you're dribbling the ball up the court and a defender is hounding you those first 30-plus feet and you're having to go left a couple steps, go right a couple steps, dribble behind your back, dribble between your legs just to get to half court, if you do that 10 times in a row, it wears on you. And then you see shots start falling short and all those little things that basketball people really pay attention to.
The Nolan Richardson 40 minutes of hell, right?
Exactly.
From, back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and that Bob Huggins, right? It's Press Virginia. It's, it's that style of defense. They wear you down. Sure. And if you look in the Western Conference, the Lakers, for example, this first team popped in my mind. Patrick Beverley and Dennis Schroeder are two of the biggest pests in the NBA. That's one game in particular where if they're going against the Lakers, I think you have to play that lineup because Ja Morant playing 32, 33, 34 minutes and Patrick Beverley guarding him for 25 of those. And then Patrick Beverley goes out and gets a break and he guards Desmond Bane. And then Dennis Schroeder picks up Ja for the other 8, 9, 10 minutes. That's going to tire him out. It's inevitable. Especially if you're playing both ends, just constantly dribbling up the court. And we saw, times last season, even when Desmond Bane was in the game, Ja have the ball and he just throw it over to Desmond Bane, get it up across half court and then give it back to me, when we get into our offense and things like that. So that's my main reason for this. I think it's situational. I don't think it's something you can see every game because you have a big 6'9" guy like Zaire that you can put at the two. You have John Conchar, who's a great rebounding wing, who's talked about shooting his 40+% three-point shot a little bit more. You have options at the two to play with Tyus, to play with Ja. Even you can slide Dylan Brooks over there, who's played the two a lot of his career. That's another option as well. So you have a plethora of options where you don't have to put those guys on the floor together. But I think it works sometimes because you look, in this conference, you're going to have Damian Lillard playing, with Anthony Simons. And you look even in the Eastern Conference, you're going to have Darius Garland playing, with Donovan Mitchell, two guards that are both under 6'4" as well. So combo guards are kind of a thing in the league now because you want to have, multiple guys who can get you into your offense in this day where we're emphasizing spacing and we're emphasizing pace. And Desmond Bane has worked on his handle, and it's improving. But Tyus Jones is a point guard. He's had the best assist to turnover ratio in the NBA the past 4 seasons. So having him in the court to take Ja off the ball, where we can see more of those back cuts like he had with Steven Adams when he's off the ball, had that nice dunk. And we can see Tyus Jones off the ball getting some spot-up three-pointers. He was one of the Grizzlies' better three-point shooters this past season. Joe, I think that's the reason alone. It's a situational thing. It's not an every game thing, but I think it works. When you play those defensive guys, when you play the Lonzo Balls, he might not even play this season, but he's a pest as well. Once you play those guys who are going to wear you down, it's tough.
No, you're right about that. I agree with that. I think that's your best argument is those types of teams. And more teams are going to be in a position to do that. So I think that's fair. Teams are going to blitz Ja just like the Timberwolves did. The playbook on how to slow down Ja Morant kind of came out in that Minnesota Timberwolves series. If you have the personnel to do it, you can blitz him and make him make those choices and get the ball out of his hands and make life more difficult for him. And I think he'll see that more, not just in the playoffs, but in the regular season. So I think your argument for Tyus is strong there. There is something to be said for contract year improvements in shooting. And I hope that Tyus maintains that productivity because it means that the Memphis Grizzlies are a very good basketball team. Tyus Jones had close to a career year last year, and the Grizzlies obviously benefit from that. We'll see if he's able to continue that because that was almost an aberration in terms of how effective he was from beyond the arc. You mentioned Desmond Bane, and I think that's another reason why I like keeping Ja and Tyus away from each other. The improvement of Bane, I think you can get what you need from a Bane-Morant backcourt or a Bane-Jones backcourt and not have to bring those two guys together. And you're almost certainly not going to play Ja, Tyus, and Desmond together because now Bane is your 3 as a 6'4", 6'5" guard with, everybody's talked about his wingspan and all those things, which I'm not going to do Desmond. I appreciate you, Desmond Bane, regardless of how long your arms are. I just want to make that very clear to my good friend who's not really my friend, but I like Desmond Bane. Start him, you cowards. I started that. Just remember that. Whenever somebody uses the you cowards line.
This is a breaking news moment. That's the first time we've heard you use the you cowards.
Oh, that's true.
On Locked On show. I've been waiting
audio. It's weird in audio. Typing it out, it might be a little more effective. I'm going to have to work on how I deliver it as the season gets started to make it sound a little bit better. But that's okay. We can get there. We got plenty of time to develop how more or less I'm going to be using that phrasing. Speaking of more or less, Damichael, how do you think about this for opening night when the NBA is back at full tilt and you're able to make some daily fantasy entries? All right, like based off of player projections. Maybe you take Ja Morant to score more than 27.5 points, or you take Steven Adams to have more than 8.5 rebounds. You take Zaire Williams to have less than 4.5 assists, and Dylan Brooks to have more than 17.5 shot attempts. Just kidding. Maybe you're trying to string some luck together and giving yourself an opportunity, more or less, to have some success in daily fantasy. Hopefully you do that with Prize Picks. I love the format of Prize Picks. It is very, very fun, very easy to use. You can make it work like this. 2 to 5 players, if they score more or less than Prize Pick projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any given entry. There's no competing against other people. There's no hoping someone else fails or you succeed. It's all about you against the projections that are put up. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, all the way to cricket. Any sport under the sun, just about, you will be able to make some projections with Prize Picks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. You also get safe and fast withdrawals, and they are currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 over at prizepicks.com. Finally, here's another one that makes me nervous, Damichael, in terms of pairings. You did a good job. Credit to you. You're very smart, very learned about the Grizzlies, so that's not surprising. But here's one that I'm interested in your take on, because I think this is a good example of local media, such as yourself, and I'll very loosely use myself as part of that definition, both in terms of local and in terms of media. But you, most certainly, when I see national media, or when I see like it's fantasy basketball season, as we just mentioned a moment ago with Prize Picks, and you can do positionally ranking players and all that sort of stuff, I see Zaire Williams listed as a 4 a lot. And I think that it's them saying, here's a 6'9" guy who has some length. Maybe he can be a stretch 4 like everybody else in the NBA. I have concerns about that. And I especially have concerns about that if Taylor Jenkins were to go true positionless basketball and bring in Brandon Clark as his 5. Because now you're looking at a lineup that, again, if Dylan Brooks is your 3 and John Conchar is your 2, you've got a lot of size out there, right? And you can actually rebound, especially with Conchar, a little bit better on the wing to try to offset that smaller front court. But I think that, and I want to stress, I don't think the Grizzlies are doing this. You've talked about it on this show. Taylor Jenkins has played Zaire mostly at the 2 this preseason. But I just wanted to bring up perception versus reality in terms of the national spectrum and picture of things. Zaire could theoretically play the 4, depending on who he's aligned with, like Steven Adams. Maybe it's less of a concern because you've got a big bruising body that can clean up the glass a little bit. But Zaire wouldn't necessarily play with Adams a ton. Maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. when he comes back healthy, Brandon Clark in that reserve role. I am nervous about pairing Zaire with anybody, really, if he is playing that stretch 4 position. Maybe you can talk me out of this one too, but at least we've seen Tyus and Ja kind of work. Putting Zaire in his massive water jug as he tries to gain weight in a position to be a big, regardless of what word you put in front of it, stretch big, for example, that makes me a little nervous. Again, I don't think Taylor Jenkins is going to do that, but I worry that people, or maybe in a pinch, the Grizzlies think, oh, he's 6'9", he can play the 4. Yeah. I'm not so sure he can, at least not at this stage of his career.
Yeah, and here's some breaking news for everyone tuning in here.
Ooh.
It's not happening.
Take that, you ESPN fantasy basketball minds.
And NBA 2K too.
Yeah, NBA 2K. Great point. Right. NBA 2K.
Yeah, like
that underrates the Grizzlies all the time.
Yeah,
bunch of jerks.
It's not happening, but at least not right now. So
right.
I actually got a chance to talk to Zaire Williams a couple days ago about this in particular, because I asked, have you been playing any time at the 4? Because we've seen him at the 2 in the last preseason game. He came off the bench at the 2. We've seen him at the 3. And he basically said, not much, but he said what everyone says about the Grizzlies offense. And 1 through 4, the positions are pretty much interchangeable.
Ja Morant, the 4.
Could you imagine?
Fluid.
Could you imagine? But
lots of jumping.
That's why, we saw that game when DeAnthony Melton started at point guard against the Suns, and they had John Conchar in that lineup, and those guys ended up beating the Suns. And it's like, this lineup's never played together, but they knew what to do, because outside of just little positioning things where you line up on the floor in the offense,
right.
1 through 4 is particularly 2 through 4 are very interchangeable in the Grizzlies offense. So that's why you see him at the 2 and 3 and a lot. But again, Dillon Brooks, most honest guy on the team. If you want a real assessment of a player, that's the guy you go to. And I went to Dillon Brooks about Zaire Williams. And he kept it a buck. He kept it honest. He said, when it comes to Zaire Williams, defensively, he's come a long way. Made a lot of strides. I know, Joe, we mentioned before, he talked about his lateral agility in the past and things like that. But he said, Zaire, he's great against those smaller guards. You right. Love him against Steph Curry. We saw, I thought, as Duncan Robinson was shooting off against, the Grizzlies in that last preseason game, Zaire Williams actually had the best success against him in terms of running him off the line, running him off of shots, and forcing him to take tough shots and things like that. Zaire Williams had the best success using his length and things like that. But when it comes to those bigger guys, that's the next step in the evolution for him. Garden knows Lucas. Garden knows Kawhi Leonard's, who are going to put their shoulder into your chest.
Paul George.
And Garden knows Paul George's. And even to a lesser degree, some stronger 2 guards, Devin Booker, for example, or, those type of players I feel are tougher for Zaire, at this point in his career. And that's basically what, Dillon Brooks said. And that's why he told us going into the summer after his interviews last season, he said, getting bigger, getting stronger was his biggest emphasis. Then I saw him in summer league. I said, it's not really bigger yet. Then I saw him at media days, and I was like, this is just not happening. The guy's only 20 years old, and it's not coming. Joe, and most of the viewers here know it'll come. It'll come.
Yeah, it came for me when I came out of the womb. When it came. I wish I had his problems.
It hasn't come yet. So with all that being said, I agree with your with your sentiment there on Zaire Williams. I think we'll see Dylan Brooks at the 4 before we see Zaire Williams. And we just mentioned the multitude of options: David Roddy's, Jake LaRavia, Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama, Xavier Tillman, Jaren Jackson Jr. when he's healthy. That's 6 guys right there before you get to Dylan Brooks. Shoot, I might put John Conchar because of his rebound.
I was just about to say the same thing.
I mean, you have options, but he's playing so well at the 2 and 3. Just don't bother him.
And I agree with that completely. And I want to stress that, okay? I'm not saying this is a knock on Zaire Williams. One of the best things about him is he's a legitimate perimeter player at 6'9". That's why the Grizzlies acquired him. There aren't many Zaire Williams-looking dudes walking around like a mini Kevin Durant. And I'm not saying that's what Zaire is going to be. I'm saying in terms of his frame, that is what he looks like. That is the capacity that he has and the potential that he has. And that's one of the reasons the Grizzlies made the trade they did, took the swing they did. He doesn't need to be that guy right now. He doesn't even have to be half of Kevin Durant. If he is someone that can consistently score the basketball off the dribble and from 3 and use his frame on the perimeter as a 6'9" basketball player, that's massively important to Memphis, regardless of whether or not he's ever some superstar caliber. They already got those guys in Bane, Morant, and Jackson Jr. Thanks again for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022. It's a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview. Search for Ultimate Pro NBA Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Damichael, obviously, on the next episode, we'll be talking about the results of Grizzlies and Magic, all sorts of interesting things that I'm sure will come out of that game. Some of the pairings that we talked about maybe won't get as much run like Morant and Tyus. They may not play at all.
I want to channel the fans' perspective here. At the FedEx Forum, what did they say, Joe? They said, we want Kenny.
Yeah.
We want Kenny. I want to see Junior Lofton. I want to see Junior Lofton get on the court, and I want to see what he can do.
That's probably going to be a main topic of our next episode, is the cult of Kenny and how he does in what will likely be his last main chance on the main roster. Because, again, I think it's 50 games that he could be up with the Grizzlies, which is a decent amount. But he's going to spend a lot of time in South Haven playing for the Memphis Hustle, and that's not a bad thing, as we've discussed on this show before. So Kenny Lofton and his Grizzlies, at least for one night against the Magic in the preseason, we will talk about that on the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you again so much for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day, 5 days a week. We are here for you, and we are happy to help you along your Memphis Grizzlies journey. For my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole, I'm Joe Mullinax. Thank you for locking in with us. As always, it's appreciated. Stick with us as the season gets underway. This is Locked On Grizzlies.